What if your training was setting you up to fail when it matters most and you didn't even know it?
There shouldn't be, in my mind, a reason to teach them a way to manipulate the trigger, for example, that they're going to have to unlearn later on as they get more advanced.
Jim Shanahan is here to challenge the status quo. With over 30 years of experience across military, law enforcement, and elite firearms instruction, Jim's mission is to raise the standard of what we call training, and he's not pulling any punches.
I've dug really, really deep into the old Federal Air Marshal Qual, the tactical pistol course.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people describe that as the toughest law enforcement qualification that ever existed. And it is a hard qualification, but that it probably says more about other law enforcement qualifications not being real difficult, moreover it being crazy, stupid hard.
Mm-hmm. In this conversation, we break down why most people start their journey too low, how to blend performance and defense for real-world readiness.
Could you make a more accurate shot? Could you change your mind?
Right, change your mind. That's exactly what I was getting at, because in the defensive space, you need to shoot fast, but you need to be able to think enough in that time to be able to stop at the right time. Whereas in competitive shooting, usually you have a number of shots you're placing and you know
right.
what those are on each target, right? And what it really means to lead under pressure.
How your people do have a direct reflection on, what you did for them, and how you're rated as a leader is reflected by how your people do.
If you're serious about becoming a thinking protector, this episode might change the way you train for the better. Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed, whether you're watching on Rumble or YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you find this show. If you don't want to miss another episode, head to defenders-live.com and become a free subscriber. That way, every new episode gets delivered straight to your inbox. And if you're looking for top-tier firearms and self-defense training, go to defenders-usa.com and check the calendar to see what's coming to your area this year. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I'm your host, Lora Thorson. Jim Shanahan is a seasoned leader, trainer, and founder of Advanced Performance Shooting with over 30 years of experience spanning military service, instructional leadership, and tactical firearms training. A former U.S. Army platoon sergeant, drill sergeant, and senior NCO, Jim has also served as a civilian instructor in advanced law enforcement, protective services, and active shooter response. He holds elite certifications from Rangemaster and Modern Samurai Project and is trained under names like Tom Gibbons and Mike Seeklander. But what truly sets Jim apart is his mission to raise the standard of firearms training by fusing competitive and defensive performance, mentoring others to lead, and preparing students to step to the line confident, capable, and in control when it counts most. Really looking forward to this interview with Jim Shanahan. Let's welcome him to the show. Hello, sir.
How are you?
Great. Why are you giggling?
Oh, I'm listening to that. I'm like, holy cow, I want to go train with that guy. I'm like, wait a minute. I get that chance all the time.
That guy is you, Jim. That guy is you. Yeah. So I want to lead off with something that's on your website, which I love. And on your website, it says, hope is not a course of action, which is just unbelievably true. I'd like to dig into that, but I also want to tie that into, I guess you're an author of a couple of 2 or 3 books, and one of those is called Deliberate Responder. And you were explaining to me earlier how that name came to be and what that really means. So could you unpack that for us?
A tiny bit, and I can tie it to the hope is not a course of action has always kind of been. I saw it somewhere. I couldn't even tell you where.
Yeah.
And they said hope was not a plan. And I'm like, okay, cool. I can make that sound better or cooler. And I had the opportunity, for example, to go to Scotland a few years ago on vacation. And our tour guide said, if you go to Scotland and you don't plan on seeing things in the rain, you're not going to see Scotland. So you pack an umbrella, you pack a raincoat, and you plan for those things. To not plan for that worst case scenario, to me, is just that's just not the way to go. I tie that with the title of that first book that I wrote, One of 100, A Deliberate Responder. It was from a Heraclitus poem talking about soldiers on the battlefield. And that's the one of 100. And then Deliberate Responder was just the way I kind of looked at. I didn't want to take away from police or law enforcement, those true first responders, firefighters, paramedics, but a lot of people trying to appeal to people that wanted training or were looking for training. We're phrasing it like we are the initial responder, the first responder. And I didn't want to take away from them. And that initial responder very oftentimes is that hope is not a course of action kind of idea, where they didn't really plan for that. You know, they might not have taken a gun that day. Tom Gibbons talks about a few of his students that just weren't ready that day. And then I started looking and digging, and I chose the word deliberate, and then looked really hard at the definitions, and it gave deliberate responder its own definition as well. Sourced it through English teachers and everything to make sure that the words were right and punctuation worked. But we said that a deliberate responder, when evil strikes, is prepared to respond mentally and physically without emotion, undue consideration, or reflection with an appropriate amount of force. And really wanted that tied to everything that we do, not just firearms, but physical fitness, health, the way we take care of ourselves, how we manage our finances, everything ties into that.
This sounds really familiar to what I've been trying to shout from the rooftops for the last 3 years. So I think I found a really good person to be on the show. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a very good understanding of the holistic approach that I am trying to promote, really, about what it means to be a defender of life. And so you talk about raising the standard and introducing high-level training early in a person's journey, even before they know they really need it. And so I'm curious, what does that look like in practice, and why is that so important?
I think in practice, in a nutshell, we have all seen, anybody that's been around training for just a few minutes, you see courses, not to point fingers at anything, because it's a technique, but you see courses, here's a basic course and here's an advanced course. And once you've taken this advanced course, now you can go take the really advanced course, and you get over here and we're going to teach you how to shoot on the move. And I was and I understand the concept of, we have to be safe. We have to be able to get the safely manipulate a firearm before we do lots of other things. But once we can take that step, when we can actually be on the range, live fire with a student, there shouldn't be, in my mind, a reason to teach them a way to manipulate the trigger, for example, that they're going to have to unlearn later on as they get more advanced. If we start like a normal reaction to a stimulus, roughly 2,500ths of a second. So one of the first live fire shots we have students do, not so much in our concealed carry course, but in most of the other classes, is a timed compressed surprise break. And most of them very quickly are breaking them in the teens. We talked to them about a Tempe, Arizona police study where it showed from finger straight to gun fired on average is only 600ths of a second.
Really?
That doesn't, it's actually, I had to go, I'm from Missouri. I heard somebody else is too.
Yeah.
So that show me thing, I had to go test it. And it's accurate. If you do your compressed surprise break with your finger on the trigger and already prepped, and get an average set of times, and then do the same exact thing, but with your finger straight and at the signal fire, it's on average about 600ths of a second.
And so are you saying that that's an example of what some call high level training?
I would say.
Okay. You're saying introducing that earlier is better.
I think introducing it earlier is better. Talking about right from the beginning how we should be resetting the trigger earlier.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because 15 years ago, everybody taught pinning the trigger to the rear. Maybe 20 years ago now, and that everybody taught that, and we were all making a mistake, and most of us know we were making a mistake. But that's one of the hardest things to overcome. For a lot of people, because that's what they learned right from the beginning. Those were those neurons that were wired. Right. And they always stay there.
Yeah. And especially, and I don't know if there's any science behind this, but especially with new students, it seems like they are exceptionally spongy. I mean, they take in stuff so well, especially if they don't have any previous experience. And so I believe those formative hours and days in those first, few lessons or classes are really, really important. So
yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it matters. I've never thought it mattered. I was very active in USPSA, competitive shooting in the 90s. Some before then, but life got busy. The Army got busy. But there was a huge divide in the 90s. And phrases like competition will get you killed.
Yeah. And you talk about combining those now, right?
Yeah, and that's really why I started the company. I was so aggravated that, here's a military law enforcement professional gun carrier carrying a gun for a living to protect human life. And here's the competitor that, they're we're not really breaking sound barriers, but the technology is growing from there. The techniques and ideas are growing from there. But we tried to completely separate those. And I think somewhere in the middle was where that basic brand new student just kind of got left for a long period of time. Should I go this direction? Should I go this direction?
Right. One or the other. So then how do you work to combine those two things, those two worlds, into making someone who we consider, I guess, a real world performance shooter?
So I look really, really hard at average human performance kinds of things.
Okay.
I dug really, really deep into the old Federal Air Marshal Qual, the tactical pistol course. A lot of people describe that as the toughest law enforcement qualification that ever existed. And it is a hard qualification, but that it probably says more about other law enforcement qualifications not being real difficult, moreover it being crazy, stupid hard. But it frightens people. It's a pretty high standard. And when I started digging in why they build, Tom Bullins is the guy that created that and ran the training program. Why did he pick this time and this thing? And he was looking at, this is what we might have to do. And these are what the great fast shooters in the world can do that in 100% of the time. And then when 20 years went by, 25 years went by, maybe. And now they had sports science studies that I could look at to see that the things that Tom called around to, like gun sight, Thunder Ranch, Mid-South, and said, hey, what are your great shooters capable of? Because there wasn't a database to go to see what a draw to first shot needed to be, for example. And now we have sports science in virtually any sport there is available for reaction, response, biomechanical movement times. And those times are awfully close to the same that they were from the 80s and just telephone calls. So I start everything based off of those basic average human performance. This is what your draw should be. If you're here, you're at the average mark. So how can we go faster? Where can we look for those efficient things that will help with some of that?
So you start with a baseline based on data that you have, and then you're integrating some aspects of competition and some aspects of self-defense shooting in your program. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And so what's an example of that?
So like split times, for example.
Okay.
Split times are maybe last year, big, huge topic. Oh my gosh, you can't think, you can't do huge arguments online at what split times are. Split times are valuable and split times are important in the competitive shooting world. And I use those examples and what a person's capable of to, okay, this is how fast you can go. How much thinking can you do if you slow down this much? Okay. If you backed it off just this much, what more could you do? Could you make a more accurate shot? Could you change your mind?
Right. Change your mind. That's exactly what I was getting at. Because in the defensive space, you need to shoot fast, but you need to be able to think enough in that time to be able to stop at the right time. Whereas in competitive shooting, usually you have a number of shots you're placing and you know what those are on each target, right? Whereas real world is not the case. Like it doesn't go that way. So
it shouldn't go that way.
It shouldn't go that way. Yeah. And so having the awareness in a thinking person's brain while making those splits, where is the speed at which you can still think in order to stop shooting and have control basically, but still go as fast as you can go? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, quite a little bit. And that's the performance side of it for the company name. That's what I was looking at. Yeah. Well, it wasn't necessarily the performance that the title has kind of become for some training, where it ends up being a lot more for a lot of participants. It ends up being very speed focused, like the competitive sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to take that performance piece and say, what am I capable of? And can I step to the line and perform to that capability? And the knowledge that we help them collect with the data, and I'm capable of doing this split. But if I back off just a tiny bit, I can get this amount of time and a level of control between it.
Right.
With a desired outcome.
Yes.
They're not. I showed, one of the phrases that everybody kind of crinkles their nose up now when they hear slow down and get your hits. So in the quantified skills class I taught this last weekend, I had all students kind of hanging around for a minute, and I said, I want you to visualize the phrase "slow down and get your hits." And we'd been working on 5 shots on a 3x5 card. Mm-hmm. So they're pushing hard. It's close to a bill drill. That's what everybody's trying to get. And I said, I want you to picture what you think, visualize what you think, slow down and get your hits means. And I ran a couple runs and talked to them again. And the fastest run I ran was like 2.6 seconds. And we're calling out times for them. We're showing them. And I said, that was my slow down and get your hit. And all the shots were touching one another in the card. But my draw to first shot was like a 163 ballpark, way slower than the previous ones.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like,
that reminds me of what Adam, the founder of Defenders USA, he always says that you shouldn't try to shoot faster. You should try to see sooner. So when he talks about speeding up, it's for me anyway, there's a lot of, how do I say it? Mental and physical embodiment that goes into shooting the gun. It's how do I say it? It's really hard to explain, but it's almost that I go into some kind of another state of being in order to shoot faster, which is actually a more relaxed way of being rather than a more tensed up way of being, if that makes sense. And so it's really ironic that the very thing that makes me shoot faster and see more and be more dialed in and focused is sort of a more relaxed state of mind, which I understand under stress is harder, but there is a space where I believe that can happen given enough practice in doing that, because it's such a subconscious allowing and letting go process that I believe, at least for me, once I developed a core competency in that area, then I could let go and trust myself to do it, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what it was for me.
I think it's in tune.
In tune, yeah. Or some people call it a flow state too.
Yeah, you have to. And I really believe, I joined the Army pretty early in life. I was barely out of high school. The only time I went to college was to drop each of my kids off when it was appropriate for them to go. But just paying attention and watching and listening and studying stuff, I think we know our brain works very similar to a computer. And computers slow down when there's a lot of information in there. Yeah. It's like it's fishing for the right spot. And a lot of times I think shooters, depending on how they learn, and I don't think it matters if it's a tactical person, if it's practical, if it's competitive, I don't think it matters. If they're doing something shooting related that they don't understand why they're doing it, that's clouding the system.
You're right. That is clouding. And knowing the context in which they're doing it as well, I believe, is very important.
If we can't, and that's like my quantified skills class is a process versus outcome focused 16-hour program. And it breaks down everything. I challenge them to, and it's not, we have an instructor version, but in the end user version, there's a few teach backs in there and they don't know they're going to be. I'm like, hey, who thinks they can build a good two-handed grip? I do. Oh, cool. Face this way. Put your hands in your pocket. You turn around and face this way. Do everything he says as close as you can to building that grip. Kind of like the telephone drill where I whisper over here, and by the time it gets to the end, because there's a lot of people that have a decent grip for sure, but they don't know how they got it there. And it's not always as repeatable. And when the gun's not doing what they want, or they're not able to make the gun do what they want, they don't know where to go back to in the computer program to fix it.
Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah. And it's even more frustrating to watch people not being able to find the right answer. What's so crazy to me, Jim, is that usually the answer is so simple. And we have a tendency to complicate it and make it harder than it is. And really, it tends to be pretty simple because I think we get in our own way about it. That's been my experience anyway. If you've been listening to Defenders Live and something in you knows it's time to go deeper, not just in your training, but in your life, become a paid subscriber of Defenders Live. Each month we meet for a live group call, having real conversations about physical growth, emotional discipline, and spiritual strength. You'll be part of a growing community of people just like you, committed to becoming true defenders of life and of their families. This isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, doing the work, and not doing it alone. So go to defenders-live.com and become a paid subscriber and take your next step toward becoming the kind of defender this world desperately needs. I want to talk about your leadership role a little bit because that's fascinating to me. You've had leadership roles in the military, in law enforcement training, and now you're running your own business. I'm curious what some of the lessons you've learned about leadership throughout your career that now show up on the gun range for you, and how do you also go about mentoring others into leadership roles? I'm really interested to hear more about that.
And that's a realm where I've always worked on. Kind of. It actually probably started about mid-teen for me. I was very active in the church growing up. I grew up in a Nazarene church. My brother's a Nazarene pastor currently in Billings, Montana.
Really? Huh.
But getting ready to move back to Missouri.
Oh, okay.
But a big church choir came down to our church for some kind of event, and I had never seen our church choir quite like this choir. They're swinging in the choir loft, and it's just, I was like, holy cow, that's real music, holy smoke. And the choir director would just point to somebody, and they would empty part of the choir loft. That person would come around to the microphone, sing a portion of the solo, and it just filter back in on the end. And they'd sing some more, and he'd pick somebody else, and they were in the middle. And he'd have to empty the choir loft and bring them around to the front. And after the program, I asked the choir director, I said, why don't you put the solo artists out on the end? He said, because I don't know who they're going to be. They don't know who they're going to be. I expect them to be able to perform. And I call on them because the good Lord tells me that's who to call on. And I expect them to be able to step to the front and perform. And I probably didn't recognize that as that true leader, mentor then at the time. But building in my Army career, I was a leader pretty early in my Army career. And with soldiers underneath me. And the Army's span of control is just 3 to 4 people. That's all anybody's really in charge of. But right from the beginning, you should be teaching them. You need to be teaching them, how they do your job. And the way to teach them how they do your job is to do your job better than anybody else can do your job and set the example for them so that they can just step out and sing when it's their time to step out and sing. And it just kind of, that's kind of the way the professional Army would push leadership growth. And it's always, the mentoring aspect is always tied into that with monthly counseling, progress reports, annual progress reports that have how your people do have a direct reflection on, what you did for them and how you're rated as a leader is reflected by how your people do. That should be no different in firearms training. It's every bit as important of a role. So the guys and I started the company in 1998. This was a few years before people were interested in learning to teach with me or jumping in those AI roles. But early on, once I knew they were serious, I tell them that church story. And I said that if you're in the choir, when I call on you, you need to be ready to step to the front and sing. I'm not gonna, it would be wrong. It would be poor leadership to pick somebody that you didn't think was ready. It would be equally wrong if when they step up for the first time, that you hadn't sort of seen it in rehearsals ahead of time, and you should reasonably expect that something might not go as well. They'll get tongue-tied, they'll get nervous, but that's part of that growth process, and then just building them from there. And I think that leadership, not that I think it's missing from a lot of the trainers that I would go take classes from. I think they're great leaders and ambassadors to the sport and to the defensive mindset. But there are a lot of instructors and far more new people meet that maybe less professional, less leadership-like role instructor, because it's so easy to hang that shingle out.
Yeah. That's really interesting that we're talking about leadership, because I happened to watch a podcast this morning, and that's exactly what the topic was on. It was not planned, but it was a very interesting podcast. And I remember one of the things that this guy spoke about, which sort of surprised me, but then when I thought about it, made a lot of sense, was he talked about part of the way he develops good leaders and exemplifies a good leader, in his opinion, is that he learned that the leader in the room should know basically when to be quiet. And he said that he thinks there's a misconception that leadership means the person standing in front of the room talking. And actually, in his opinion, a good leader will know when to be quiet and when to back off and when to go away even, and allow others to step into roles and allow them to grow, which is kind of what you were alluding to, which I thought was really interesting. That just seems contradictory, I guess, to what previously had been in my mind about leadership. And I wonder like, even for me, if maybe some of the beliefs I had about leadership are changing, because what he was talking about, I could identify with, even on a gun range, being, the lead instructor, and how I encourage and prepare people to handle being in front of others and give them opportunities to grow and lead themselves, which should be the definition, I think, of what leaders do. Would you agree?
Yes. I think that empowering is a word that you can see in good training. You can see it sets in good examples lots of times, but empowering and leadership don't often go together. They're not worked together. But a great leader, a good leader, empowers the people that they're responsible for.
Right.
That's their job. And there should be reflection. Did they do that? And if there's not, like the quantified skills class I taught this past weekend changed. That's kind of like my cornerstone class, the class that I really would like to take on the road and have a couple times. It's a layered class that the end user doesn't really see. We form teams depending on the number of students, and I limit all my classes to 10. But we form teams, and each of those teams has one of my AIs sort of assigned to them, but the AI still flops, so everybody gets help from everybody. My AI's scores on the evaluated runs that we do are part of the team's score. They step up and do the demonstrations, the live fire demonstrations for whatever evaluated task. And they're doing a large percentage of the coaching. But there are also the end user student has a coaching role. Depending on the class, we tell them, hey, you don't really have a speaking part. You have a watching part. I'm observing things, and you and I are going to talk about what we observed. So I'm helping that coach learn what he just saw. And a lot of times the corrections that I'll make for the benefit of the student, I'm doing third person as if they're not standing there. Like, man, did you see that crap grip he had? Holy cow, he wrapped his thumb all the way around the back of that slide. I can't believe he did that. And of course the shooter's right there and he hears it, intermix a little bit of humor. And he's like, oh yeah, I didn't. Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's a layered approach. That I find very effective, but I've been blessed and able to in teaching roles for a pretty long time. I was teaching in the Army 10 years before I started the company. So
did you have trouble stepping into that at first, or were you just kind of thrown in there? Or what did that process look like?
As an instructor?
Yeah.
Or as a teacher? I volunteered to go to drill sergeant school because I really that job appealed to me. They decided that it's a very and the modern Army might differ. I retired in 2005. It's a very there's a lot of responsibility as a drill sergeant, and I was only an E5 at the time, a young non-commissioned officer, and they didn't have very many E5 drill sergeants because of a perceived maturity level. When I made the next rank, I actually got selected for drill sergeant school. So, and they tell you that you're the top 10% of your job set if you're picked for that school, and cool, that was awesome. But that a drill sergeant school in the Army, you're back in basic training. You do everything that a basic training soldier has to do, all the qualifications, all the physical fitness tests, everything. And you have to learn how to teach those things. And it's a very, I didn't recognize it for what it was at the time, but it's a very process versus outcome focused approach. And it came it was easy for me. It was simple for me. I still had to work at it. But it was something that I really, really liked.
I was going to ask you what you struggled with the most with that, but it sounds like you really enjoyed it.
Oh, I really, really enjoyed it.
What about it was so appealing to you?
On day one, basic training was 9 weeks long when I was a drill sergeant. I think it's a little bit longer now. Day one, minute one. And I had males and females. I was a drill sergeant at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. So truck drivers, kids that are going to go be medics, any of the, sometimes I'd call them soft skills. So like the combat jobs, they go to a little bit different program, but the kids that get off the troop trams, the cattle cars to start basic training, some of them right out of high school, some of them, the oldest basic training I had was a 36-year-old mother of 4.
No kidding.
That decided she was ready for a change in her life.
Wow.
I had more than one surgeon come to basic training. A guy with one that really stood out was a doctor of divinity that I didn't even know existed. But from absolutely every walk of life, with absolutely every possible, different religions, different beliefs. They grew up in different everything. Totally. And 9 weeks later, they're soldiers. They walk like, they march like, they dress like, and
so that was
really,
gratifying
truly,
for you to be a part of that.
Super gratifying. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I think a good firearms instructor, that's one of the reasons that keeps them doing that, is that seeing that growth at whatever level people they're teaching and experiencing that growth is what keeps them doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I often find that my students inspire me and they don't even know it, you know? They come in like just scared as a cat and not sure what's going on, but they're exhibiting so much courage, just showing up, some of them, you know? And then to trust me in the process and doing it anyway, even though they're scared, and then watching them gain confidence, even just over the course of a day, and seeing them accomplish things they never thought they could do. Sign me up for that all day long.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want to be a part of that? That's really interesting.
No, I just think that's what keeps me doing. I stayed away from the internet and all that for so many years. And now I was scared to death that that person that was a little bit afraid to come to the range, that person that was maybe taking that step away from one arena into another in firearms, I was scared to death that grandmaster level competitor with industry sponsors and traveling the country. I was afraid that would intimidate them to the point that they wouldn't come to class. So I stepped away from all of that and stayed very quiet on the internet stuff, much to that was a marketing effort. That was a poor choice on my part. I thought people were reading the same magazines and listening to the same people and hanging out with the same kinds of people. And, if somebody comes to you and asks about class and you tell them you've trained with Tom Gibbons, they're like, who? Oh, the guy that started Rangemaster. And they're like, the what? They don't know.
Yeah.
So it was foolish on my part to back away or stay away from that stuff.
Yeah.
But where I'm
you didn't stay away forever though.
No, I got kind of smart. I got smarter.
You learned. I'm curious, sticking to the topic of leadership, I'm wondering, you said that you went into the military really early, really young. And I'm curious if what your perception and your thoughts and beliefs about what leadership looked like in the beginning versus now, have they changed at all? Have there been any reinventions of yourself throughout the years? I can only imagine that must be what has had to happen in order for you to be where you are now.
I would hate to think, and Steve, my partner, I always say, you know what I mean. I would like to think that I think personification is the right word, of all of the great leaders that I had. And I don't have any of the characteristics of any of the poor leaders that I have, because we've all had less than stellar leaders, that I switch and change things when I see things that I think would make me better, or would make my students better. But lots of it really, and the Army was easy for me because that's not the environment I grew up in necessarily. My mom and dad weren't yelling and screaming and throwing trash cans and stuff. But there was discipline and there were expectations and responsibilities. So stepping into that was not a culture shock necessarily for me. So it might have been easier for me to stand back earlier on and kind of watch and just be in awe of those people that were in front of me.
Yeah. That's awesome. It sounds like you've had a really awesome life and probably some incredible role models, I imagine, that influenced you throughout the years as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And I'm just so grateful that you can be a role model for other people too, because we need more of that in this world. We really do. People who have a heart of service and who care about others. And I can tell just by the things that you've said and how you've said them, that is your heart. And I'm really glad that you could spend some time with me today and unpack some of what you do and why you do. I'm curious if people are interested in learning more about you, maybe coming to take a class. You mentioned that you went on the road a couple times. I don't know if you're going to be out and about, where people can find you. And we have your website here, advancedperformanceshooting.com. So if you guys want to check him out, that would be the first place to go, right?
It's probably the easiest place, and my cell phone number's on there, on the website somewhere. Contact us or whatever. I list most of my classes with shootingclasses.com. That seems to work pretty well for me. And they're pretty, it's a good spot. And we're
and finding you have a YouTube channel too, right?
I have a YouTube channel, Advanced Performance Shooting. Yeah, I think it might say LLC on the channel. Okay. But if somebody searches Advanced Performance Shooting, they can find it on YouTube. Okay. 2 or 3 shorts a week. Always like the drill a month go up. I'm huge trying to help the guys from Gunset Training Group push that 52-week challenge. So I get that video and pictures up all the time. Always looking for hosts, interested in hosting a class. I don't demand very much. I don't take up a very big space. And we try to do, probably have 1, maybe 2 classes scheduled a month down here.
And you're in Missouri, right?
In Missouri, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, no one really has an excuse not to see you. Missouri's kind of in the middle there, sort of, kind of anyway. Maybe a little
right off the interstate.
Right off the interstate, yeah.
Two St. Louis International Airports, 2 hours away. Springfield Branson Airport's an hour away.
No excuses, right?
Yep, none.
Well, I've enjoyed talking to you today, Jim. Is there any parting words that you'd like to tell the audience, or is there something that we didn't cover that you'd like to make sure that you say?
I think everybody in the audience should go to Amazon and look for my One of 100, a deliberate responder book.
Yeah.
A lot of shooting drills in it. A lot of what we actually talked about, why I do what I do and what led me down this path, is in there. My student handout for our quantified skills is actually one of my published books available on Amazon. That when a student comes to that class, hey, there's a book. So a lot of like the in-between talking points that all instructors have. This is why we're doing this, or think about that. And here's this little tidbit that's in there. It's like my lesson plan in book format.
Wow. That's really valuable that you wrote all that down.
Yeah, I try.
Yeah.
Value added service.
Yeah. You're doing good work, Jim. You really are. I really appreciate you coming on. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much.